You've probably been told that after 50, your metabolism just slows down, that it's normal, inevitable. That weight gain, especially around the belly, is simply part of aging. Maybe you've even said it yourself. You eat roughly the same. You move about the same. And yet somehow, the scale creeps up and your energy drops. It feels like your body has quietly switched teams. But what if that story is incomplete? What if your metabolism didn't break? It simply stopped receiving the right signal. What if the problem isn't that you're getting older, it's that a powerful metabolic system inside you has gone silent? Over the last decade, researchers studying metabolism after 50 discovered something that completely changed how we understand weight loss over 50 and metabolic health over 50. Most adults are walking around with a calorie-burning tissue that can dramatically boost metabolism naturally, and they don't even know it's there. You didn't lose it. You didn't damage it. You turned it off. And the most surprising part? You can turn it back on starting this week. To see how, we have to rewind to a discovery that quietly rewrote metabolic science. In 2009, researchers at Harvard Medical School were running PET scans, the same imaging technology used to detect cancer, when they noticed something unexpected lighting up on the screens. It wasn't a tumor. It wasn't inflammation. It was metabolically active tissue in areas like the neck and upper chest. For decades, scientists believed this tissue, called brown fat, disappeared after infancy. Babies have it because they can't shiver yet. Adults. The textbook said, lose it. That assumption turned out to be wrong. Not slightly wrong, completely wrong. Most adults still have brown fat. Not dead tissue. Not scar tissue. Active. Living. Energy-burning brown fat, sitting quietly in the body, waiting for a signal. And here's where it gets interesting. The people with the most active brown fat were significantly leaner. They weren't necessarily dieting harder. They weren't doing extreme workouts. Their bodies were simply burning more energy at rest. 1 gram of active brown fat can burn up to 300 times more energy than a gram of regular white fat. Let that sink in. 300 times more energy, even when you're doing absolutely nothing. So if it's still there, and it's that powerful, the real question becomes obvious. Why isn't it working? To understand why brown fat activation matters so much for metabolism after 50, you have to understand how different it is from the fat most of us are trying to lose. White fat is storage. It's your body's savings account. When you eat more calories than you burn, white fat cells store that excess energy as triglycerides and quietly expand brown fat. On the other hand, is not storage at all. It's combustion. It's a built-in furnace. Brown fat cells are packed with mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside your cells, and those mitochondria contain a special protein called UCP1. Instead of turning calories into stored energy, UCP1 essentially short-circuits the process. The energy from food isn't packaged and saved. It's released as heat. Pure heat. That's why brown fat is often called thermogenic tissue. It burns fuel without asking you to move, without requiring extra exercise, without willpower. When it's active, it quietly boosts metabolism naturally in the background. And that's the key. It doesn't replace healthy habits. It enhances them. So, if this furnace exists inside you and research shows most adults still have it, then the real mystery isn't whether it works, The mystery is why it went quiet in the first place. If brown fat is still there, and it functions like a metabolic furnace, then the obvious question is this: what shut it down? The answer isn't laziness. It isn't age alone. It's environment. Think about how different modern American life is compared to even 50 years ago. We live in climate-controlled homes set at 72 or 74 degrees year-round. We move from heated houses to heated cars to heated offices. We layer clothing the moment we feel even slightly cool. And our bodies adapt. Brown fat is a use-it-or-lose-it system in terms of activity. If your body never needs to generate heat, it simply stops prioritizing the tissue that does it. Add to that constant eating. Most adults rarely go more than a few hours without food. Insulin stays elevated, signaling the body to store energy, not burn it. Chronic stress compounds the issue. Elevated cortisol shifts the body toward energy conservation and visceral fat storage. Over time, the furnace doesn't disappear, it goes into standby mode. And standby can last for years. But here's the hopeful part. Standby isn't the same as broken. And if the problem was environmental signals, the solution can be environmental signals too. If modern life cooled the signal, then the fastest way to boost metabolism naturally is surprisingly simple: controlled cold exposure. Not extreme, not dangerous, not jumping into a frozen lake. Research consistently shows that mild, cold, even temperatures around 60 to 66 degrees Fahrenheit is enough to stimulate brown fat activation. When your skin senses cold, your brain releases norepinephrine, a powerful neurotransmitter that acts like a starter pistol for brown fat cells. The UCP1 protein inside those cells switches on, and your body begins generating heat by burning stored fuel. This is not exercise. This is not willpower. This is biology responding to stimulus. One study had participants spend several hours a day in a 59-degree room for just 10 days. Their brown fat activity increased measurably, and their cold-induced calorie burn rose by roughly 30%. But here's what matters for real life. You don't need 6 hours in a cold room. Turning your thermostat down at night to 65 degrees, ending your morning shower with 30 to 60 seconds of cold water, letting yourself feel slightly cool instead of constantly insulated. These are realistic signals your body understands. And timing matters. Brown fat is most responsive in the morning, when sympathetic nervous system activity is naturally higher. A cool night, a brief cold shower at 7 a.m., and you've just stacked the strongest natural brown fat activation signal available. But temperature is only one lever. And this is where things get even more interesting. Most people think of fat tissue as passive, something that simply stores excess calories. But brown fat is highly responsive to chemical signals from the food you eat. Certain compounds can gently stimulate the same pathways that cold exposure activates, creating another layer in your brown fat activation stack. Capsaicin, the compound that gives chili peppers their heat, activates a receptor in your body called TRPV1, the same receptor that responds to temperature. When that pathway is triggered, your nervous system responds as if mild heat stress is occurring, which indirectly enhances thermogenesis. Human studies show capsaicin can increase metabolic rate by roughly 4 to 5% after meals and enhance fat oxidation. You don't need extreme spice. Half a teaspoon of cayenne in eggs or soup is enough to create measurable effects. If you dislike heat, capsaicinoids found in sweet peppers activate similar pathways without the burn. Green tea is another powerful metabolic signal. Its compound, EGCG, works alongside caffeine to extend norepinephrine activity, keeping brown fat engaged longer. 3 to 4 cups per day falls within research-supported ranges. Omega-3 fatty acids from salmon, sardines, or high-quality fish oil may also promote the browning of white fat tissue. Even menthol, the cooling compound in mint, activates cold-sensitive receptors in the nervous system. Layer these signals in the morning, and you create a metabolic window your body hasn't experienced in years. And when you combine that with strategic timing, the effect becomes even stronger. Here's something almost no one talks about when discussing how to boost metabolism naturally after 50. Brown fat follows a circadian rhythm. It's not just what you do, it's when you do it. Research shows brown fat activity peaks in the early morning hours, when your sympathetic nervous system is naturally more active and cortisol follows its normal daily rise. That means the same cold shower at 7 a.m. is metabolically different than one at 9 p.m. Morning signals hit harder. Now add fasting to the equation. When you go 12 to 14 hours without eating, say you finish dinner at 7 p.m. and eat breakfast at 9 a.m., insulin drops. Stored energy becomes more accessible, and your body shifts into a fat-burning state. In that environment, brown fat activation is amplified. You're no longer signaling storage. You're signaling mobilization. And when you layer a cool night's sleep, a brief morning cold exposure, green tea or a capsaicin-containing breakfast, and a short overnight fast, you're stacking multiple metabolic cues into a 2-hour window. That stacking effect is where real change happens. It's not one trick. It's coordinated signaling. But there's one more variable that becomes increasingly important after 50, and ignoring it can quietly undo everything else. Let's address the concern that's probably sitting in the back of your mind. Yes, brown fat activity tends to decline with age. Studies using PET imaging show that adults in their 20s generally have more detectable brown fat than adults in their 50s or 60s. But decline does not mean disappearance. The tissue is still there. What changes is responsiveness. Hormones act like dimmer switches in this system. Thyroid hormone, especially T3, directly influences UCP. One expression, the very protein that allows brown fat to generate heat, lower thyroid activity, which becomes more common after 50, can reduce that signal. Estrogen and testosterone also play regulatory roles, which helps explain why menopause and age-related testosterone decline often correlate with changes in body composition. But here's the critical point. These shifts do not shut the system off permanently. They lower the sensitivity. And sensitivity can be improved. Lifestyle signals cold exposure, strategic fasting, movement, sleep quality still activate brown fat even in adults over 60. Age changes the volume, but it does not remove the instrument. And that's why the solution must be layered, not extreme. Now let's make this practical. Not extreme, not overwhelming, just structured. Because the biggest mistake people make when trying to improve metabolism after 50 is doing too much too fast. Brown fat activation works best when signals are layered gradually. Week 1 is about temperature. Lower your nighttime thermostat to around 65 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Or use lighter bedding so your body experiences a mild drop in temperature during sleep. Then, at the end of your morning shower, switch to cold water for 30 seconds. Focus it on your upper chest, neck, and upper back areas where brown fat is commonly concentrated. That's it. Week 2 adds chemical signals. Introduce 1 to 2 cups of green tea in the morning and add a moderate source of capsaicin cayenne, chili flakes, or even sweet peppers if you prefer less heat to 1 meal per day. Week 3 introduces metabolic timing and movement. Aim for a consistent 12 to 1, 4-hour overnight fasting window and add 20 to 30 minutes of brisk walking or light resistance training daily. Movement releases irisin, a hormone that supports the browning of white fat. Week 4 addresses stress and sleep. Prioritize 7 to 8 hours of sleep and actively reduce chronic stressors. By week 4, you're not forcing metabolism, you're restoring it. And this is where patience becomes critical. Here's where many people lose momentum. They expect dramatic change in 7 days. Brown fat doesn't work that way. Activation happens quickly. But visible body composition changes take time. Most research on brown fat activation shows measurable increases in activity within 4 to 8 weeks of consistent cold exposure and metabolic stacking. Fat mass changes tend to appear closer to the 8 to 12 week mark. This is not a crash diet effect. This is a physiological recalibration. The first changes most people notice aren't on the scale. They feel warmer at rest. Their hands and feet aren't as cold. Morning energy improves. Some describe it as better circulation or a steadier metabolic rhythm. Clothing may begin fitting differently before body weight shifts significantly. That's because brown fat preferentially burns stored white fat without dramatic water fluctuations. And here's something important. If you sleep poorly, live under chronic stress, or constantly overheat your environment, progress will stall. This system responds to consistency, not intensity. But once it's re-engaged, the benefits extend far beyond fat loss.